Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Layla Regan. I'm the city librarian with Sierra Madre Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us all this afternoon and for giving us your time. We are here with TSK Architects. We have Jonathan from TSK Architects here to answer any of your questions or provide any feedback. This is the architect firm that we have decided to move forward with regarding the library meaningful improvement renovations. So we have not started the design yet, just to make that very clear. We have not started the design, but this is a great opportunity to hear your thoughts on the library building moving forward. If Jonathan's going to come up and talk a little bit about TSK Architects, and afterwards, if you have any questions or comments or feedback, I'm going to ask. We had issues with the running around microphone at a different meeting. So when you have questions, if you could line up here and use this microphone right here. So without further ado, I will start us off with Jonathan from TSK Architects. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. All right. My name is Jonathan Rickert. I'm the Civic Market Director and a Design Principal with TSK Architects. At TSK Architects, it's Tate Snyder Kimsey Architects. We're an architecture firm that was started in 1960 in Nevada, and now we have offices in Los Angeles, in Henderson, Nevada, Reno, Nevada, Phoenix, and Dallas. And so as a firm, one of our big focuses is civic work. So it's doing work such as libraries and working with communities to really build places that are going to be of a blessing and really meet the needs of the community itself. Our team consists of an MEP engineer, structural, cost estimator, civil, landscape. And so our team together has a long history and a lot of experience working on library projects. And so we are just really excited to get to work with this community, with Sierra Madre, and really work on the library and really try to bring it up to the needs of your community and really just prepare it for the needs of future generations as well. So again, really just excited to be working with you all, with the city, and really try to create something special for the community here. So I'd love to hear any questions you have, and I'll try to answer those the best that I can.
Can I come up here?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if the architects are aware of the issue with the library. When it rains really hard, and the water comes down the street and hits the gutter system right in front of the library and comes up over the sidewalk. And I'm just wondering if you guys have considered that, and also the fact that apparently all the climate scientists are all saying that the Southwest, including Southern California, is going to have more hot and humid weather. Wet bulb is what they call it, wet bulb temperatures. And that means more water in the atmosphere, which means more rain in certain areas. And it's going to be drier in the summer. But I'm just wondering if you guys have considered that, or if you know of it yet. I'm just bringing it up so you know.
Yeah. Do you want me to repeat the questions? Yes. All right. So the question was that currently there's a civil issue where water on Sierra Madre Boulevard, is that correct, in the front side? So that when it rains, the water comes up and hits the gutter and splashes onto the property. And so what is the consideration for that? So I'll be honest, it is the first I'm hearing of the issue. And so we don't currently, because we haven't started the design process yet, we don't currently have any plans for that. But that's something that we can take a look at and see if there's anything within the project that would make sense for us to try to address that issue.
Maybe you could just repeat the question so we don't have to get up every time if that's okay. But can you, for those of us who aren't familiar with the scope of the project, I understand design hasn't started, but can you just give an overview of what is the scope? Is it earthquake? Is it seismic? What is the scope?
Yeah, so the question is what is the scope of the project that's going forward? And so that's a little bit of a question. So part of it is that we know that there's structural deficiency in the existing building. is that there's structural issues in the existing building. There's also mechanical, electrical, plumbing issues in the existing building. So our first task is actually going to be evaluating the existing structure to see what needs to be done to bring up the existing structure itself up to a point where it is safe and where it's going to move into the future well. And so that's going to be our first task. And so part of the funds or part of the money towards the project will be going towards that. And then beyond that, once we figure out how much of our funds are being contributed towards that structural, that MEP existing, then we will look into renovating the existing structure with the hope that we can actually add square footage onto the south side of the building, the back side of the building, to actually make it bigger. But basically our first task is going to be determining what needs to be done with the existing structure just to really bring it up to where it needs to be today. Yes.
Have you been provided the original set of plans for the building?
The question was, have we been provided the original set of plans for the building? Not yet at this time.
Okay, I did see them in the archives, I think. They're in the roll.
Yeah, we would love to see those. Yeah.
It'd probably be helpful to understand the core of what you're dealing with and
Correct.
add it in.
Correct. Yeah. Regardless of having those, what we call them as-built, but regardless of having those original plans, we will still come in and review the building ourselves just to see, has anything broken, has anything been added onto that weren't in those original. But having those would be of great help to us, just making sure, understanding how walls were built and everything like that.
And the original design intent.
Correct. Yeah, because one of our goals is anything that we add on to the building, we really want it to fit the character of the original building as well as the character of Sierra Madre. We're not looking to bring in something that does not fit this town and this community.
Jonathan, can you talk about the library as a piece of architecture of its time?
Yeah, so the question is, can we talk about the library as a piece of architecture? So it's kind of a little bit of a mid-century modern building. It has some beautiful design on the front side. So it has a low and long profile with kind of low sloping roofs and lots of nice clear story. One of the things that really caught us about the building was how beautifully lit it is on the inside. It's never fun to be in a building that feels like a cave. There's times and places for it. This room is for presentations. It needs to be able to be dark. But having a library, having that nice daylighting is of real importance. And so as we look to add on to the building, we want to keep that same language, so that same mid-century modern language, utilizing modern techniques to give some of the same materiality. So hopefully, being able to bring some of that same character on the front side of the building to the back, because I think everyone here who's been to the library can see that the back of the building and the front of the building almost read as two completely different buildings. And so as much as we have the funds to, what we would like to do is really make it feel unified and consistent as a structure.
Have you appointed a lead designer in your firm?
So I will be the lead designer for our firm on that.
Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so my background is I've been working in civic and higher ed for quite a number of years. I've been trained from the beginning as a designer. I got my master's degree at Cal Poly Pomona, so just down the road. And most of my career has been working in higher education and civic facilities. All right, so question, comment. As a local neighbor, I have a preference to retain the trees in the front as opposed to stripping away all but the palms. So are you saying keeping the palms or removing the palms?
The design that was presented a few years ago had all the trees removed but the two palms.
The two palm trees, got it. So at this point, we have no design for the landscaping. I appreciate the comment. That's helpful for us to know. One of the things that we will look at as we're looking at the landscaping of the project is just the health of those trees, making sure that they're in good health so that they're not going to be falling apart in their near future anyways, where they might become a hazard to the people, dropping limbs. But it's helpful to know that those trees are something that the community loves, and I feel like we've actually heard that already, that the landscaping up front is desirable.
So are you planning architecturally to design the bigger window spaces in the new part of the building so that it has more of a mid-centric feel, so it brings nature inside, so you can actually see the trees and the kind of come inside?
Yeah, a lot of it will depend on the budget that we have for changing or for, you know, reformatting the back. But we really want to meet the character of the front and the community as a whole, while also providing good daylighting for the library itself. So that would very much be a goal of ours.
Will you have another workshop like this when the plans are out?
Will we have another workshop like this when the plans are out? I'm getting one. I'm getting signals from the back of the room.
I'll just come here, it's easier. So once the design is done, we will have them come back where you can ask them about their choices and anything like that. So we will have that. We're not sure when that will be, maybe September, October?
Probably earlier than that.
Oh, yay. So, but we will have, the good news is we will have a much larger lead time as far as notifying you of the program. This one was a little bit rushed. We really wanted to have TSK start right away. So this one's a little bit rushed, but the next one you will have a much bigger heads up. For, sorry.
We have a deadline.
Oh, yes, sorry. I'm being reminded of the deadline.
The reason for the rush.
So the reason, yes, the reason why we are pressed and why we are rushing a little bit is the 10 million grant. The expenditure date is we have to use all of our funds by January 31st, 2025. So that is why we are doing our best to get the design going as soon as possible. So that's what we're hoping this meeting will help inform them of community needs, desires, and that kind of thing. So once the design is done, we will have, hopefully, Jonathan come back. And we'll try to pick another day like this where it's an open day for most. I'll just stay here.
When the design, what will the level of design be? Will it be just conceptual or fully developed design, not quite construction drawings? Where will we
For that first meeting, I think ideally, from our standpoint, is it would be towards the end of conceptual design before we're getting into design development and construction documents, because at that point we wouldn't have time to make changes. So we really want to design for this community, and so we want to make sure that, you know, we're able to hear your concerns, your comments early enough for us to actually still put those into the project.
should be in the conceptual before design development?
Yeah. But I'll be working with Arnolfo and the city just to determine exactly when that is.
I'm new to Sierra Madre, and so I wondered, have you already got a detailed programming document that you're working off of for that conceptual design, or is that something that's still developing?
So the question was, is there a detailed program for the library? So that is something that is still under development, because a lot of it will depend on the funding for the project. Is that we have to determine how much of the funding goes towards just structurally correcting the existing building and systems. And so once we determine how much of our budget that's going to take, then we'll know how much budget we have remaining to really work on the programming aspect and look at what we can add to it. Now, you know, and also look at how we can renovate the existing.
Is there a wish list that you're working from? Do they want more space for the children's room? I'm just curious what's on the wish list once you get past
He has met with our board of trustees the Library Board of Trustees, and he got to hear from the Friends of the Library, the Historical Preservation Society, and our IT department as far as determining their needs and wants. The library does have their own needs and wants, but we're waiting to see, again, in a similar timeline of what will be available before we start handing him a huge laundry list of things. So we're trying to be conservative on it. While we know 10 million seems like a lot when it comes to structural and seismic and ADA. It's not going to go as far as we will hope, but we will have a building. So what we hope it will include are, he has heard some of the bigger items that we would like. The Friends would like a bookstore or a sorting area. The Historical Preservation Society would like proper archive facilities. IT would like an actual server room and not a closet. And the library, of course, would love to have, a programming space where the community can also use it for their events. So we no longer have to roll tables out of our reading room to have programming. But there are other things, and we're hoping to get more into that once the community needs are heard and the organizational needs are heard, and then we get to work a little more closely with Jonathan. So he'll definitely get all of the library's things. He's also going to come and talk to our staff at some point, so he will get the staff viewpoint as well.
I have three concerns. The first concern is regarding to what was once known as the California room. That's the room when you first walk into the library. It's on the left. And I understand that it's been changed to what's now called the meeting room. That the books on reserve in the California room, I assume they're about California's history, have been pulled out and put on the main floor, as well as the ones under glass. My concern is that perhaps we're going to slowly lose our history. I don't think this was a wise decision. I like the library, I like the librarians, but I don't think this was a wise decision, and I hope that maybe that could be reversed. I don't think the classes at the library are as important as preserving our history and providing a quiet place. I think in our last survey with the residents, they really weren't big on the new library. So I don't know how much these programs are going to be utilized if we do a massive change. I think you should really listen to the people, do workshops. My other concern is going digital. I am a former preschool teacher, and children learn best really by hands-on learning, not pushing a button on a computer. It's wonderful for children to come to the library, to be read to by their parents, or hear story time. It's a very sensory experience. And I'm also concerned that if you go digital, it will be up to the whim of, the library board or librarian or the council or the residents to simply hit delete and certain books will be banned or lost. And that's totally antithetical to the Ray Bradbury thinking. Many of you may remember Ray Bradbury was here many years ago. He talked about how wonderful libraries were because they were free. So you could go and check out a book, whatever. Well, he certainly knows a lot about book banning. And we don't want to fall into that trap of thinking that we're doing what's best for our future, for our children, by going digital. When, in point of fact, we might actually be better off just leaving the books there. It's just food for thought. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So the decision for the California room was that room is not does not have any HVAC. It does not have any climate control at all. So in the summer it's very, very hot. In the winter it's very, very cold. And I wish our archivist was here, but it was kind of a group decision to move some of the more delicate books. The ones that are out in regular circulation are usually copies, and a lot of things we do have an archive facility that is somewhat climate controlled. Again, there are a lot of issues with the library and our HVAC. So some have been moved into that. A lot of them you can still check out. There are ones that are still in the glass cases, but again, that room is not climate controlled. We have put in a humidifier and a dehumidifier and a air purifier in that room, but there is no heating or cooling in that room, which is another fun issue. As for the digital, I'm not sure. We do have digital now, but in the library we haven't focused too much on providing a lot of digital. I'm not sure. We actually have our librarian who orders our digital. It's not something you can delete a book from without a lot of work on our end. So I'm not sure if that answered any of your questions or concerns, but it's something we're considering. When we move to the temporary location, we will have a very limited collection, so that's the only time where digital might be a bit more of an importance. But when we move back, we're hoping to still have a really robust collection.
Maybe you could continue to call it the California room.
I'm sorry?
Maybe you could call it the California room again when you come back, whatever you put it in.
Well, we're hoping we're hoping to have a better archive facility in the new building to have it not be, you know, a meeting room or the California room, to have it be very, very specific space that is climate controlled, that is appropriate for storage of all of not only our city's history but our state's history.
You have a temporary location already set up?
It's not set up, but we have one. It is going to be at the Sierra Madre room at the YMCA. So we're going from an almost 9,000 square foot building, including the basement, which is where the archives and our Friends of the Library are, to an almost 3,000 square foot facility. So it's going to be quite a big shift in size, but we're dedicated to serving this community, and we've tried hardships like COVID before, so I'm thinking we can adapt and hopefully still be supportive and provide.
Maybe continuing on that same thought, can you kind of lay out the next steps and the timeline? I understand, you know, we'll have an opportunity at CDs to come back and, you know, understand and maybe provide some input. The work, Jonathan, that your firm will do between now and then with respect to the existing facilities to understand, you know, the mandatory scope, because I think a lot of folks here are looking at what we would probably consider the discretionary scope, right? There's the stuff you must do, and then let's look at what we might have some money left over to achieve. So can you talk about whether it's due diligence between now and then, and how you've established the scope for the construction?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the process from now until construction, or perhaps all the way through? As I mentioned before, kind of our first step is really going to be evaluating the existing structure and compare that to what it's going to cost to bring that up to where it should be, to the budget, so that we can find out what discretionary scope we can then afford. And so at that point, we'll enter a phase of conceptual or schematic design. And during that part, basically what we'll be doing is taking kind of an idea of what funds we have left, and then with all that we've heard from the community, develop floor plans, elevations, you know, some renderings that basically show how we can use those funds in order to really meet the needs of the community, meet the needs of the library and the board, and all stakeholders that are part of the project. At that point, I believe, is when we would be looking potentially to have that meeting with the community so that we can hear your feedback. It really gives us an opportunity then to adjust as we need to. We then go into a phase called design development. And in design development, what we do is we really take those kind of pictures, like the pretty ideas, and we start actually making the documentation that a contractor will use to actually build off of. And design development, it's about taking the next steps in design. So they still won't be able to build off it, but we're getting more of the way there. And it's also another check for us to check against the budget. I mean, one of the things that's going on in construction right now is construction prices are inflating very quickly, but they're also moving around a lot. And so at each phase of the project, it's a chance for us to stop and for our cost estimator to look at the drawings and say, yes, we're still on budget, we're still on track, or, you know, we actually have more funds that we can use, you know, so therefore we can add a little bit more in, or we've gone too far, we need to begin to pull back a little bit. Then the final phase is construction documents. And in construction documents, it's where we're building doing the final documentation, the final drawings that a contractor will use to actually build the project. After construction documents ends, we go into permitting, and that's where the city will look at it just to make sure that they don't see any concerns with the drawings, that we are meeting all of the city's requirements, all the code requirements, everything that needs to be done on the project. And at some point in that process, we also will go into bidding, where we are bidding the work out to potential contractors for the building of the work. So kind of exactly when all of those phases will occur are something that we're still working with the city on, trying to determine how we can move forward in a way to hit that January 2025 deadline. Because we know that that's kind of our stopping point. So part of what we're doing is we're working back from that stopping point and trying to fit everything in an appropriate way to get us there.
Real quick, we are looking at the relocation for the library to the temporary will probably be around December of this year or January of next year. So that's will be, if not sooner.
Yeah. You might
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
But that's where we're looking at for right now. It does mean the library might be closed for a month or two while we set up the temporary location. But we will have some other things. We're trying. We're getting there. But odds are it'll be at the end of this year. We'll be relocating temporarily.
Having been through my own major remodel and knowing that things always take longer than expected, and you mentioned there's a deadline of January 25. We don't want this to be a rush project. Can this be done, and can you meet that deadline without being haphazard?
Yeah, so part of the way that we will design is understanding that we need to make sure and have flex in the schedule. And part of the way that we will do our documentation is to make sure that we can have a high quality project within the time that we have. So you're right, we don't want to push things to the last minute to where we're going to run into problems of not being done on time, or the contractor having to throw 90 people on it at the last minute to try to get it finished, because the reality is typically when things like that happen, they don't happen as well. And so part of the way that we're developing our schedule is to make sure that we can develop a good project within that time frame.
A couple things. First is sort of an urgent advocacy recommendation or request. The city has talked about investing funds in previous projects. The last time we were looking at this, a number of about $1.5 million was suggested as coming out of reserves. There's been, I think, some discussion by members of the council of wanting to listen to that idea, but I think the urgency is that commitment, whatever number it might be, should be now at the front end so that the TSK has that number that they can work with in their budgeting and their planning. The idea that it'll be at the tail end will not change the product. It might help with contingencies and things at the other end, but if we want more value put into the building, now is the time for the city to make some sort of commitment. And I would throw out a number of $500,000 or $750,000 to add to the existing budget for the state grant that we received. The other thing is sort of at the other end of the design process, that this will probably be our chance to do something with the library. And I think it's really important that the space planning be flexible and efficient, and that includes the staff area to improve the efficiency for the staff in supplying the services that we value here, as well as things regarding use of the space for the archives and the children's room and meeting places, because doing your ADA work is going to shrink the collection. That's just a given. The shelves need to be much shorter. They need to be spaced out wider. So I think the more we can think about what is a library needs going to be 40 years from now and 50 years from now, at this point, the better. And
Yes, it has to be used. It's from the California State Library, so it's through the state library. It can only be used for library funds. It's actually two grants. We have a California State Library targeted grant, which is the 10 million, and that one has to be used by January 31st, 2025. And then we have a Building Forward Infrastructure grant, also from the state library, that is with matched funds came out to 669,210. So 10.7, give or take. But they're very specific on what they can be used for. The Building Forward one, for example, can't even include anything external for the library. So that one is only internal, structural, HVAC, that kind of thing. Even if it also covers ADA, for example, but if we were to build an ADA ramp outside of the library, the Building Forward grant couldn't cover that. So the two grants are specific and only for the library.
Okay, so they can't be diverted anywhere else?
Nope.
Is there any consideration for robotic retrieval?
What do you mean?
A robotic retrieval system would not prohibit the shelves from being too high for a mobility person to access.
So you're asking for robotic retrieval of volumes in the library space. It would be entirely dependent on the available budget we had in the project.
Yeah, so the big picture is that right now we have a mid-20th century library, what I would call an old-fashioned library. And the building is out of date, needs a lot of renovation. So we got lucky, we got $10 million. And so the challenge is to take that facility and turn it into a 21st century library, which I think should look a lot different, by the way. And, there's been a lot of talk about maintaining the present look of the library. But, you haven't begun your design work yet. Well, I have no problem if you have to do major, renovations to the look of the library. If you can do that with the $10 million to make the library more 21st century, rather than just worrying about that it looks like it always looked. It's okay, but it's not that great. Yeah. And so, all I would say is that, use a lot of imagination in your design work, right? But the primary objective should be a library for the 21st century, not making the library look like it always looked. If you have to, modify that, I'm fine with that.
20 months to spend all this money is incredibly fast, incredible. And the danger is that, and the bidding process with this level of complexity means that if you rush to get the bids in, and then since construction costs are still going up, there's a grave danger that one, in order to spend the money in time, spends more money than one needed to do if there was more time. So, is there any prospect of getting the state to give an extension on the expenditure of the 10 million? Because that might in the end save time. And the linked question is, in order to have a very fast decision-making process here, who speaks for the client? Is it the library director? Is it the trustees of the library? Is it the city building committee? Building department? Is it a committee of all of them? How is the client going to put together its decision-making fast enough to meet the target?
So for the grant question, there's a possibility that there could be an extension, but it's not guaranteed. So it depends on the ebb and flow of construction, and it'll be a state decision, possibly 6 months before the end of the grant period. As far as consideration on bidding, TSK is a design and build. Nope.
No, we're a design
Sorry.
firm, but
Sorry.
we are
Getting there.
We are discussing ways with the city to really address some of that concern of not trying to do things in a way where people have to constantly rush to get it done. And so those are kind of ongoing conversations about ways that we can work with contractors to have the process go hand in hand, to really make it more seamless and to work better.
I will say that the Library Board of Trustees will be heavily involved as well as we move forward, not only with looking over the designs, but with making sure that we're going along with the needs and beliefs of the city and the library and the community. So I'm not planning on hiding anything from anyone.
It's not the question is who makes the decisions.
Who makes the
A whole series of decisions that will be made when you've got all the input. What is the structure of decision making? Is it you, the chairman of the trustees of the library, the city building works department, a client representative? What is the structure of decision making for the client?
Do you mean when we go out to bid for anything, or
I think he means
construction?
during the design process. So if I'm speaking correctly, during the design process, as we go from one phase to another, who's examining that?
Who makes the decisions? We have to, a whole series of decisions have to be made. So there has to be a structure put in place so that everybody's consulted and somebody makes a decision. Who is that person? What is the structure of decision making? Sounds to me as this hasn't been thought through, which is worrying.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your initial question. And we also have our Deputy Director of Public Works here who can probably fill you in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Arnulfo Yanez, Deputy Director of Public Works, City Civil Engineer for the City of Sierra Madre. Sir, to answer your question, there will be a group of individuals. Director of Planning, the city's senior planner, who is our city architect, along with Mr. Reichert and TSK. From the engineering architecture perspective, I will personally make sure that the codes, the regulations, making sure the building will not fall down. I will oversee that design, along with our Director of Planning, Mr. Vincent Gonzalez, and his staff. From the library science perspective, City Librarian Layla Reagan, which will be in collaboration and in conversations with our Board of Trustees, Library Board of Trustees. All these individuals will be constantly meeting via in-person emails, telephone calls. I will personally be working with TSK and Jonathan pretty much on a daily basis. The Engineering Bureau, which is the city's Planning Public Works Department, will be evaluating the designs on a daily basis. Should any change orders occur, should any new regulations brought down by the state, which happen every January 1st, I will then notify Jonathan as far as, guess what, there's a new code coming up. Let's get ready for that.
When was the last time the city embarked on a construction of this kind of size?
Not during my tenure. My understanding, it's been quite some time. Probably during maybe about 10, 12 years ago, I understand, during our well projects for our city water system. I currently have a number of projects in line right now. Our downtown sewer main modifications, along with our sidewalk project. We recently completed our resurfacing of Sturtevant Avenue, along with other water projects over the past couple of years.
In other words, nothing of this size.
Nothing of this magnitude, nothing in the millions.
So one way or another, I've had a lot of experience of this. And so for the city, it's almost as if it's doing something this scale for the first time. So my advice would be you get advice on the decision-making structure so that it can be speedy and effective. You have outlined the number of people that have to be involved. The more people that are involved is the more time that it takes. You don't have enough time. Therefore, you need to design a decision-making structure that's effective.
Yes, sir. In my just shy of 30 years of experience, I have come across issues like that. Yes, sir. In the number of libraries that I have worked under for different municipalities in Southern California, those issues do happen. At this point right now, I can tell you that for this magnitude of the size of a project, we have the proper amount of people. City of the size, dollar amount, We have about 5 individuals that I feel very comfortable will help us get through this project. Any other questions? Engineering perspective. Thank you. Yes.
It might be a question for you as much as for Jonathan. The property has a really unusual shape. It's the rectangle on Sierra Madre Boulevard and the residential style property facing Mariposa. Are there any initial assumptions going in as to how that property will be allocated? Like, is it being assumed that the Mariposa property will be used for parking? Or, you know, are there any assumptions? Has it been considered to maybe put in some other use on the Mariposa property? I don't know, low-income housing that the city needs or something. I mean, how broadly are we thinking about all this?
That has been discussed prior to TSK coming on board. I did meet with our Director of Public Works. My findings, my research has found that I would like to use that area for additional parking space. We have to keep in mind the library is going to grow, going to get bigger. So we need to accommodate additional parking because we will be removing existing parking and moving it to another spot, if that makes sense. So that area we're talking about, I'm looking at possibly parking area with some landscape design, of course.
So that's the initial assumption
going in. Again, an idea for now. Questions? Thank you.
Any more questions for me, for TSK Architects?
Jonathan, to the extent your scope, and it's not entirely clear to me what the scope for the contractor will be, but to the extent things like furnishings, fixtures, and equipment and other, you know, sort of the chattels of the project are not included in the contractor's scope to furnish, right? Will your firm be providing an estimate for the type of fit out that is typical of a building of this type, and including, for example, when we think about an equipment room for servers and whatnot, assuming that the infrastructure for that is included in your scope, but the FF&E piece of it is not. Does your estimator assist with estimates and a bill of materials?
So you are correct. The FF&E isn't a part of our scope, but you know, we could be brought on board to help out with that aspect. But you're right. The infrastructure, basically everything that's really a part of the building itself and the site, will be a part of our scope. And we will definitely be keeping in mind and working with the city to make sure that that works with any FF&E that's desired for the project.
Okay. And does that, for example, where the line between the structure and FF&E, is that casework? And I mean, do we understand where that line is today, or that'll become more evident during CDs and DDs?
No, typically the way it's defined is anything that's attached to the building is a part of our scope. If it's something that's moved in and out, that would be considered FF&E. So the furniture itself would be FF&E. There is some flexibility there, like if we have, let's say, a library, I'm just making things up, a library check-in desk that needs to move, like that's probably something that we would put in our scope because it's really about how the building functions. But if the library decides that you want new soft seating, you know, for reading areas, then that would be something that would be a part of the FF&E.
And is that question, follow-up question, then, is that outside of the 10.7 million that's been allocated for the project? Am I understanding the funding is for the structure?
It'll depend. It can be used for furnishings and things like that. It's just going to depend on how much is left.
Right.
We are also hoping for support from our Friends of the Library and our Library Foundation and other entities to kind of beef that up or help us out where, depending on how much we use structurally for the building.
And just to echo what the gentleman behind me said a minute ago, I think as to the discretionary or how certain funds we invest in, you know, this is a nice, you have probably 80 or 90% of the scope's going to be mandatory. right? There are going to be non-discretionary things that we must do, whether it's code or other. But a decision workflow for, to the extent you've got stakeholder input from the community and other users, in addition to which is allocating between an FF&E, whether it's, crowdsourced fundraise, or how does, a decision matrix, or who represents whom in terms of the stakeholders in making that decision. I think that's, if I follow on, if I understood your question, that's where I think under the under the schedule we have for the project, that those decisions are going to need to be made pretty rapidly to be able to keep Jonathan and his firm moving forward.
Agreed, and I might have to pull on Arnulfo again because I am fairly new to this position, and I know that anything over a certain amount we will have to go out to bid for as far as furnishing and things like that, but we would definitely, I personally, as far as things within the library that affect things like our collections and shelves and things like that, I would lean pretty heavily or have discussions with not only the trustees, but I also have a running spreadsheet currently of any patron needs that I have come across. So I have a very big open door policy, so if public is always welcome to talk to me about the direction they think the library should be going. I have a fairly good idea, and I think approval from the trustees and then taking it to city council as far as deciding on who to move forward with would be my direction regarding some of the internal things. But I think the larger scope engineering wise, I don't have a say on that one.
Yeah, I categorize that as sort of this non-discretionary. Those are the most
Yeah.
that's bringing the building up to code and so forth. And that's what the gentleman spoke to a moment ago. I actually don't have much concern about that because you're talking about plan check and things that are sort of, that's day-to-day business in the city. I think where you or the trustees or others have a choice to make, right? And you're going to have a lot of input from folks in this room and folks who are not here today, and then be faced with, who ultimately makes those decisions.
Yeah, and a lot of the internal is also going to be dictated by ADA requirements. Right now, our library is not ADA compliant in a lot of ways. So I think that's kind of going to be also a big driving force for us, is to make sure that our library is ADA and is functional, not only now but in the future. And so I think moving forward, I will have a lot of input from the public. You're always welcome. Even today for this, I put my personal email on all the flyers. If anyone couldn't make it, they could email me, and I'd make sure to ask the question. I try to be as connected as possible, so that I do have that idea moving forward, and it's stuff, and it is things that I can present to the library board of trustees of these are concerns that have come across my desk. And we do discuss things like that, especially during the Library Board of Trustee meetings, which are open to the public, so anyone is welcome to join us for those if they have public comment. And I think that's kind of how it will go moving forward. And it is going to depend on funds and ADA, really, before we can make any type of formal decisions. And a lot of that is going to be more towards the tail end of the project.
I'm hearing that there might be limited funds available. I always get confused. We have a board of trustees for the library, a library foundation, and friends of the library, correct? They all fundraise for different parts of the library, or can you define where they might be the ones doing the furniture and stuff?
Right, so our Friends of the Library currently actually provides funding for all of our programming. And a lot of their funding goes towards programming, special projects, things like that. We also get funding from other entities like the Community Foundation, Rotary Club, Kiwanis, things like that. For example, for our bookmark contest, they all fund that. And our Board of Trustees is what helps guide the ship. A lot of the times they help with approving policies, writing demands of that nature. Really beneficial, really lean very heavily on them as far as keeping connected with the community. And our Library Foundation was new-ish, I think. Actually, the Library Foundation, Rob Stockley's here. He's welcome to talk about it. But they fundraise for very specific, usually physical items that can be attributed to you know, even put a plaque on, so to speak. So the foundation is specific. Friends of the Library tends to do our programming and our special projects. They helped us get Canopy, our new streaming service, for example, for this year. Just like the Community Foundation helped us get our interactive movie night that we just had. So we really rely heavily on them for that, but the Community Foundation does more specific fundraising.
Do they have funds in their account?
I am not sure. I'd have to ask. Rob is right there. Rob, does the foundation have any current funds?
Not
No?
significant.
Okay.
So no, this is a from the ground up
Okay.
sort of process.
Yeah,
Basically
the
10 million.
yeah, it's
Come on.
for now. And
No.
the or the Library Foundation will start their fundraising. The bigger issue was they wanted something to fundraise for, and after the new building was decided not to move forward with the new building, the Library Foundation wasn't sure what to fundraise for. So now they have something to fundraise for.
So at this point, really, the onus is on Jonathan and his firm to come up with something, imaginative for the 21st century that, within the framework of the $10 million. And so the only thing I would caution everybody is don't put too many limitations on Jonathan and his firm, all right? Because, some people are wedded to the past. Myself, I'm wedded to the future. So I'll give you an example. Sooner or later, the roof has to come off and probably be replaced at the old library. Well, when you do that, let's make the library a story higher, 2 stories, instead of 1 story. And that would really give us, so you're going vertical as maybe not as much horizontal. Maybe that'll be less expensive. Yeah, but of course, that would compromise the 1950s look of the library. But so what? If we have a better library within the $10 million, forget about the past, think about the future. I like the 2-story idea, by the way. Because you have to take the roof off anyhow. So why not make it 2 stories? You can get more books, more meeting rooms. Not necessarily. You don't know.
I'm an architect also, and I recently worked on a historic garage in Bungalow Heaven, where the owner wanted to keep the garage because of its historic nature. But they ended up spending twice as much on that square footage as it would have cost. They could have built 2 garages for the cost of 1. So I'm just wondering, and I understand the love of the mid-century look with the clerestory windows, and I understand the community's really attached to that. But I'm hoping there is a moment of sanity when you get the price for the structural fix.
Right.
You just take a minute and go, but what if we built new? And, just a ballpark price per square foot, and look at the 2, and if it's notable, you come back to the city and say, maybe the community needs to say something about this.
Yeah, so sorry, I keep forgetting to
I know.
respond to the questions, but the question was, we should consider, look at the process of potentially building new. And so we don't have any preconceived notions about what the building is or will be. A lot of that really just has to go with how far can our funds take us. And part of the consideration will also be the timeline we have. And so having to look at what can we achieve within the timeline that we've been given to really make the project happen. And so it'll be a dual consideration with those, but we don't have any ideas that it's going to look exactly like this. If the community wants the building to look a certain way, our goal is to serve the community. It's not about us as a firm, about what we want to achieve. It's really about serving the community of Sierra Madre and giving you the best project that we can. And so that's how we'll be pursuing it.
Yeah, and there might be a middle ground, like you save the beams and put them aside and build something that looks just like it new.
So the requirement shouldn't be that, you know, it's just a cleanup of the old design. That would be a mistake.
Jonathan, with the library not vacating until, I think I heard October or maybe November, and your need to start design urgently and to be able to respond to the questions of to what extent does the building, you know, does it make sense to remodel the existing building? What will be the scope of the retrofit required? Can you do that through either whatever as-built may be available or through, you know, site surveys? I mean, it feels to me like opening walls and, you know, doing some more invasive work would be prudent, but I don't know if that aligns with the occupancy.
Yeah, so the question is I guess timeline in terms of figuring out what needs to be done to the existing if we're going to keep the existing. And so we're still working with the city, with Arnulfo, in terms of ways to help speed up the process to make sure that we're in sync with the library, what the library is trying to achieve, while also making sure that we're completing the project. There is sort of an interesting thing that often remodels are more expensive than new construction just because you never know what's in those walls and there's always something hidden in the walls. And so part of that process will be our evaluation of the existing structure, using those valves built as well as our engineers coming out and really taking a thorough look at the project. And part of that will be assuming, if we assume that the existing building is going to go forward, is also just making sure that part of the funds is set aside for realizing that things are going to pop up that we're not aware of. And so making sure that we are planning for the unexpected, which how do you plan for the unexpected? But it's something that we have to do on every project because there's unexpected on every project. And so we'll set aside funds for those types of things. But to the degree that we are able to, we will examine the existing structure to really find out what is it and what needs to be done.
My neighbor, the late Nancy Walsh, was instrumental in putting together the storyboard that used to be in the California room. And I noticed that it had been moved, got pulled out completely. And my understanding is there was some kind of a glitch. I don't know if it can be fixed or whatever. But I just thought it would be important as part of our history and to honor her to keep that program going if you can. Keep this in mind when you have the new. I'm imagining maybe there'll be a new room for archives or something like that. Just something that just popped in my head right now. And thought I'd give a little shout out. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do our best to bring back the digital storyboard from the California room. I'm just letting everyone know that's what was said.
Jonathan, another question about the execution of the construction itself is, or I don't know if it's a question for you, but is competitive bid lump sum for the contractor, I assume, and is there an opportunity to phase the project or elements of the project still within the competitive bidding requirements? I'm going back to the comment about schedule and, you know, how can we get this project underway with some of the early works, site enabling works, things of that nature, or does it all have to be 100% design is complete, CDs go out to bid, and the whole scope is bid lump sum?
Yeah, so the question was, is there a chance for phasing the design, phasing the construction to get parts of the construction started early? What will be the process of delivery? Will it be lump sum to a general contractor? We're in conversations with the city right now of different ways the project could be delivered and what will be the pros and cons of those, so that we can choose a method that the city prefers, but that's going to be most advantageous to the project.
Excellent question. Last summer, when the $10 million was awarded, that night, that's when the wheels began to move. That night, I went home and drew my calendar for the next 3 years. The writing, the language, the lingo, whatever you want to call it, the RFPs, the proposals, my presentations, my accounting, my ideas were presented to the city, along to our city manager, to our director of public works, and is being shared with TSK now. The plan here is to empty the library by hopefully this fall. We find it easier in my world, my engineering world, to empty the building out and then move in there and just gut it out and do your thing based on the time frame that we have. So my plan is to use the entire 2024 construction. Now, I understand this year we had a tremendous amount of rain. Again, in my world, rainy days are not good because it slows down the construction project. So El Nino, whatever you want to call it, I hope it kind of is very generous to us next year. But that's the plan. The city will be working with TSK to, once Layla and her staff are out of the building, to just a little team of engineers and architects and construction workers move in there and just do their thing. Hopefully that answers your question, sir.
Yeah, well, I guess to put a finer point on it, within the constraints of public bidding, can elements of the project be phased? Or do we have to get to a point where, if I'm following your timeline, the library vacates, now it's October, November, now you're opening walls. Meanwhile, you're probably in DDs, and I don't know what phase Jonathan is in, but then we have to, the design has to be then finalized,
Yeah.
which is December, January timeframe, 30 days or so for bidding. You're down to 10
Yes.
months for construction, 9, 10 months for construction. That seems really tight to me.
Actually, those studies have started last fall. I personally have gone in and we've done a geology report, we've done a seismic report, we've done actual materials analysis of the beams and the structures that are in the building. Those wheels are in motion. Certificates have been processed, certificates have been submitted to the state, to the county, for that same reason, expedite this. So by the fall, the idea is for Jonathan's team to move in there and have that stack of documentation already in place, which I feel will be ready by early fall, late summer of this year. There is some issues down at the basement that I'm concerned with, seismic issues that I will be sharing with Jonathan. There is some Stoll's report that I have issues with as far as, okay, now the nerd is coming out of me. Sierra Madre has some very fascinating soil. Very fascinating soil. I'm getting excited now just talking about it. Especially the area beneath the library. Fascinating, solid ground. So as far as seismic is concerned, I feel very comfortable that should we have an earthquake, that building will stand. So all that stuff has been research has been done already. And that's where we stand with that, sir.
Okay.
Any other engineering questions?
Well, while you're up there, what keeps you up at night about the project? Like, what do you know today that is really concerning to you, and how do you get the knowledge or the information that you don't yet have to be able to move it forward?
Repeat the question.
Oh, what he said.
What keeps you up?
What keeps me up at night is that about this project alone, but I'm going to put some other moving components into it. I love what I do. I really, really do. My grandfather said one time, again, he must have got it from somewhere. He said, son, if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. I believe that. I really do. What keeps me up at night is the fact that this is going to be the library's finest hour. Just that alone gets me excited. It's going to be the city's, the community's finest hour when it comes to the library. I have 4 libraries under my belt in my 27-year career with great cities. And hopefully this will be number 5. And it will. That's what keeps me up at night, is the fact that this is a fun project. Again, the engineering nerd speaking. Yes, ma'am.
A little bit of sort of the same question. I'm just trying to imagine how if it's going to take till the fall to move out. And true disclosure, I'm a librarian and I've done big library construction projects. And you don't really have a set program. You haven't made a decision point whether it's retrofit and expansion or new build. And you're not going to get in there to actually figure out everything you need to know about engineering to make those
Going back to what I mentioned earlier, the wheels are in motion as far as everything is in place to just, lack of a better term, push the button type of thing. There, in what way? As far as documentation, mathematical calculations, materials analysis.
You said that that would be in the fall, so in the fall, you've got maybe 3 months before you start construction.
I think when, if I may speak,
Please.
when Arnolfo is referring to us coming in, he means that we're coming in for construction. Is that in the fall, the library staff and everything is moving out, so that the beginning, towards the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, construction is beginning.
So you're beginning construction 6 months from now.
8 months from now.
Yeah, more like 8 months from now.
That is the goal, yes. Yes.
So the analysis isn't happening in the fall. The analysis will be happening already. The city's already been taking some analysis, and then our team will do our level of analysis very soon.
Yes.
And how long do typically with because you're a government entity, how long does that bid process for a big project and complex take?
15 to 30 days. Yeah. As far as per contractor program.
My experience is that there's been a lot of back and forth that happens in that bid process.
There is back and forth when things are done at the last minute type of thing. That,
It's always back and forth.
well,
Question.
back and forth, but everything has been laid out already as far as we have drafts, we have documentation already in place from perhaps previous projects, bringing in my expertise and so forth. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a librarian or a contractor or an architect, but are you going to be charging a extra fee because this has to be done in a speedier manner?
No.
TSK was very transparent upfront during the bidding process and during the interview process as far as dollar amounts.
Same question for the contractor. But is the schedule for construction, will there be a premium on that because of the schedule to execute the construction work? Or is call it 12-month, 13-month, if my back of the napkin math is correct, to perform the construction works and complete?
Repeat the question.
Repeat that?
Yeah.
Well, the question is, will the contractor charge a premium for a shorter turnaround time?
Do you think?
For
Yep.
the actual?
But just repeat that into the microphone.
That would be upfront in the agreement. That would be disclosed in the agreement.
I guess in the working estimate today, if there is one, right, or just Jonathan, in your experience, or Arnolfo?
That's correct.
Arnolfo, in your experience, for a project of this nature, 12, 13 months for construction, again, that seems tight to me for a project of this nature. Do we think that the contractor will be including in its tender a premium for the doing of that work under that schedule?
Yes, that will be requested in the RFP for whatever that job assignment will be as far as that contractor.
So if we had more time to spend the money, it might cost less, is another way to think of it.
Correct. Yeah, and that's usually the case with any project. Yeah.
Yes, where there are time constraints on the spending of the money.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Unfortunately, that is the situation we have here. Is that, again, these are regulations that were brought down by the grant by the state. So, but it is a great opportunity for the city, and we accepted the money. Let's do the best job we can with what we have and the time window that we have. Sir.
Well, right now, the important thing is go ahead with the design. You know, everything else comes afterwards. You know, the rest of the schedule will be driven by Jonathan's design. If he comes up with it in a timely fashion and everybody approves it. So let's wish him well. Come on, Jonathan.
Wishing Jonathan well.
No pressure.
That is another reason why TSK is here. If I may share with you, there were 172 firms that inquired. There were 110 that literally called me on the phone, sent emails, etc. And then it came down to 72 who were very serious, and it came down to 14 who, it was process of elimination. The dollar amount, the window of the construction, rules and regulations that the city puts in place. Libraries are a very difficult thing to design, along with golf courses. Two of the most difficult things. Peggy, you can acknowledge for that. But TSK answered all the questions. TSK has the credentials, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, there's a reason why TSK is here. Just a great firm, great references, great experience, and the only firm that is able, can be able to complete the project within the time frame. They're the only firm that answered pretty much the questions I was looking for, answered the questions I was, and the answers I was, provided me with the answers I was looking for. I just wanted to share that with you. Any other questions, engineering related or any from the city's perspective?
Well, I think
yes, sir.
a very good discussion, very open, but one just is terribly worried about the time scale, given that the 10 million was awarded on July the 1st, 2022. So it's taken us a year to get to this point.
Yes.
Just real quickly, I know the question was, we're worried about the timeline. We did get this funding, or notified that we were getting this funding in July of 2022, and it took us almost a year to get to this point. To further that, we actually did not get the award packet for this item until maybe a month or two ago. We were awarded it, but we didn't get the notification of the timeline, when the funds would be due, the award packet, none of that until a few months ago. So it didn't take us that long to get to this point. We had to wait to see what the stipulations were for the grant before we could actively move on it.
If I may follow up on that, based on my experience, I did not want to wait until we actually received the money. I began the wheels in motion last summer. So should I have waited to today, I guarantee you we would not be able to complete the project by January of 25. The drafts, the conversations, the phone calls, the research began last July. When Layla called me, I remember that afternoon, we got the money. That's when I went to my city manager and my director of public works and said, okay, let's go, type of thing. So that's what happened, sir, with that. Yeah, we did not wait until 2 months ago.
That's just when we knew when we were going to get the actual money for it. But yes, no, Arnolfo has been involved for a while, and we have been getting, the library board of trustees, for example, has been getting building renovation updates for the last several months, I think, just to keep informed of the process and where we were, even before we knew the stipulations of the grant.
I guess I would just
Yes.
say, I don't think it's a criticism of anyone here. It's just that this is not atypical, that it would take this long to get this far. You are running in the background. The timeline you've been set by the state grant is very, very short for a project, particularly one where there are many parties and there's a community that wants to have a say. I think it's a huge challenge to function quickly, even if you had a very tight decision-making private client could just decide what they wanted.
Right.
And I think the community should be very careful about its expectations of how much input there can be, because it's going to have to move fast.
Very true, and I thank you for that.
So, sorry, just to butt in to repeat that, general concern over community input and that it's still a very quick turnaround time. I do want to state that the community has been very involved in the library building for a very long time. They were involved, we have a 2017 facility master plan that was developed by staff, trustees, and the community members, and that includes a thorough examination of the library and its deficiencies. We also had a 2018 library survey that went out to every household regarding the future of the library and the needs and what the community wanted to see happen with the library building. And then we also had a full evaluation of the community and library needs in 2018 through another project. So the community has been very involved. We did hire an architect firm to design a brand new building design in 2019 that ultimately did not move forward, mostly due to COVID situations. But the community had a huge input on that and got to weigh in on the new library building a lot. So we do have a really good amount of community input regarding the library building and its future. Whoever wants to go.
My understanding is the library design that was submitted from the 2017 program was just really horrible, and the community shut it down.
So the 2017 didn't have a design.
There was a design done a year or so after that.
The 2019 new building design. We were planning on moving forward. The community was able to provide a lot of feedback on that, but ultimately I think what happened was we could not secure funding for that building in particular.
Well, I know I objected to it, and some other architect friends of mine objected to it. It was functionally horrible. So probably that got lost in the message somewhere.
I don't know how to say this. At the last survey, many residents didn't want a new library. And if I could just use some candor, there's a feeling like the library is not listening to the residents. They don't want change. So I don't mean to be raining on anyone's parade, but I think they're happy with what they have. And I think if you go in there and you change a lot, I'm concerned that you might not get the community support or the community participation that you're hoping for. So if I were in your shoes, I would offer another workshop like this immediately when you get some kind of plan, any plan. To her point, it sounds like you're having to work with a limited fund and a limited amount of time. But remember, you're working for the residents, and the residents are like your customers. And if you don't offer something that they like, it's sort of like you're going to lose business, if I use that term.
So just to reiterate, the concern is that a lot of the community likes the library the way it is, and there might not be community support if we're not designing with the community in mind. And to that, I do have to say that this is a 1955 building, and we have deferred maintenance on it a lot. It is not ADA compliant. It is bordering on not being seismic compliant. Like I mentioned, there are rooms that do not have any air conditioning or heating, including my office. It was a very cold winter. I had many blankets. So there are a lot of things that are not working in this building, and while I understand that it is very precious to a lot of people, and I do not want to take away from that in any capacity, it is not functioning for staff. And it is not functioning really for our community either, because a lot of the shelves are, for example, way out of ADA compliant. They're way too high. You have to use step stools to get some items down.
But you don't have to do that by law.
You do have to do that by law.
Then why didn't they do it years ago?
Once you start an ADA project, you have a certain timeline to finish it.
But you don't have to start it, technically.
You do have to start it. You do have to.
If it's that concerned, why didn't they do this earlier?
Because we did not have the funding for it at all. But once you start an ADA project, you have a timeline to make your building ADA.
Start it, but you're not legally obligated to start it.
You have.
So, the bottom line is this. If you really need to do that,
Yes.
come forward, be transparent with the plans, put a mailer in the water bill, let everybody know, have a big 2 or 3 meetings, and say, this is what we would like to do, this is what we're obligated to do by law, this is our scenario. then bring in all kinds of things that people don't want, and then, you know, wonder why everybody's upset or surprised.
So,
Be
just to reiterate, is be transparent, and make sure that there's, and that is our plan. When we do have a design, we will have another program like this, and I hopefully will have a much larger lead time to be able to get that information out. As far as being transparent about the library, we have explained, especially in that 2017 survey, that the building is not particularly functional. We need a new roof, we need new HVAC, we need a lot of things outside of just ADA compliancy.
The residents will hear you. They will support that. I've lived here 50 years.
So that's
They will support that, but they may not necessarily support all these other ideas that I've been listening to for the last 5 or 10 years, like going digital, having community meeting rooms, having a playground. I don't think they're too happy. I'm already hearing my friends saying, why is it so noisy at the library? Why do they have games? It's turned into a playground.
So
They
that
don't like it.
I understand that there are complaints as far as the library being loud and incorporating other elements like a meeting room, but that's part of it. Is we don't have any place to do programs in the library, and that's one of the reasons why the library is so loud.
But maybe you don't need those programs.
You could do them at the rec center.
I don't have a problem.
No, I understand.
I don't have a problem with you know, crafts or sewing or those are great programs, but they don't belong in a library. A library is a place for quiet, for study. It's not a place for children having, you know, doing crafts or things like that.
So just to reiterate, it's that a library is not a place for programs, it's a place for quiet and study. But someone else has a comment. Do you want to come up and say it so that I don't start to repeat things?
That's okay. And I appreciate your opinion as a retired educator and a retired third grade teacher, and turning 70 in a couple weeks. I am looking forward. And libraries today are not the libraries of the 50s and the 60s. And I am a teacher, and I love books and I love libraries, but it is a place for the community. And if you look at certain cities whose libraries are dying, it's because it's just a quiet place. And you have to understand, okay, you can disagree with me, and I don't know what people you're talking about, but there is another side to your opinion. And I think if we want our Sierra Madre Library, I mean, it thrived during COVID with all the innovative programs that the librarian had and everything. And if we want our library to maintain its place in our town, we have to look forward. We can't look back, and that's my opinion.
Thank you. To reiterate, just to say, I know, and we want to make libraries inclusive to all, and we want to be able to provide quiet space. And one of them is if we have a meeting room or a study room or a programming room, the library can still be quiet and we can still hold our programs, which would then be able to accommodate those that do rely on the library for programming. For example, families, we get a lot of compliments from young families regarding our library programming, and that's not something we'd be willing to not have anymore. And as far as we did do a lot of programming where it was at Memorial Park or it was somewhere else. That's a lot of work on staff. We are a small staff, and to have to divide our staff as far as doing reference at the library and providing in that way, and also having to be somewhere else for a program, which would require 2 to 3 staff, that's asking a lot from our staff. So we're trying to accommodate not only our community, but our staff that is working hard to serve our community. That's all I have. And also, my door's open, so I'm happy to hear any issues or any concerns. Feel free to email me or call me or write me a letter, and I will happily take it into consideration. I don't know if there's are there any other questions or comments or concerns? Thank you, T. Oh, I'll just come up here. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I do appreciate and value all of your comments and questions and concerns. And I want to especially thank TSK for coming in on a Saturday. We will be doing this again once we have a design. And so we hope to see you all at that one. We'll do a lot with getting the word out on that one. Thank you for being here. Have a nice day. Go to the art fair.